Hello, I'm Jamie Younger, and this is If You Knew Me, a podcast about the inner lives of women. Every week, we walk into the heart and mind of one woman. Each guest can choose to share her real name or to remain anonymous. This week, we hear from Shanti Grumbine. That's her real name. Shanti is a visual artist. She transforms common items like newspapers and plastic bags into powerful devotional objects. Her work includes drawing, printmaking, paper cutting, and sculpture. Shanti has been making art for over 20 years. She's been awarded major fellowships, grants, and residencies. While still in high school, Shanti was fascinated by a question that no one seemed to be asking. Can a professional artist be a mother? Her own mother had been a professional artist, but eventually left the art world to become a clinical therapist. Today, Shanti is a single mom of a 3-year-old daughter and lives in upstate New York. Shanti tells her unique story of dealing with a chronic illness, being a single mom, and continuing, despite it all, to create. Her story is entitled, Can You Be a Mother and an Artist?
Motherhood is inextricably bound to being an artist for me in my life, in my experience, because my mother was an artist and teaching art until I was around 14 when she went back to school. So my first experience of making and creativity was with my mother. And my first association with making in that way, in that professional way, is with my mother. She started her MFA when I was around 4, I think, and maybe finished up around when I was 6 or 7. I was really disillusioned in high school. My mother had started taking photography classes at Ulster Community College nearby, and she thought I'd really love this one particular professor, and she advocated for me to take classes there when I was 14, and it was so magical. I would go after school and stand in this dark room and watch these images emerge. So we were sharing with each other in that way. She sort of, I don't know, it was this osmosis. It was just this flow back and forth. When I was young, she made these giant charcoal drawings, and she would work late at night. And sometimes if I woke up, I'd see her and she'd be covered in charcoal. But even the themes that she explored, she did this series of these charcoal drawings. They were called Housebound. And I think it was because of having me, a young child, and being housebound. And so there's all these charcoal drawings, looking out the windows. And then there was this other series that she did for her thesis, I think, where she was walking. She loved walking and just photographing whatever she would see on her walks. A lot of it was roadkill or an old man who was on the street or a black dog or a dead deer or a yellow wire, just the everyday and how it just sort of seeped into her world. All of those things became a part of who I was, who I became as an artist. I ended up going to art school in Chicago, and I ended up winning this award through the National Foundation for Advancement in the Arts. They have this award for high school aged students or whatever. We got flown to Miami for a week, and we took workshops and hung out, and there was this fancy gala, and we had to get up on stage and be hi, I'm Shanti Grumbine. I'm a photographer from New Paltz, New York. And then we were interviewed, and I didn't know that that interview would they would decide how much money they would give us. I just was so clueless. I felt so alone. I don't know. But they interviewed each of us, and I didn't really have my portfolio. So they were supposed to be looking at our portfolio. And I thought I was really I was allowed to ask them questions, these professional artists that I was getting to share time with. I was just really naive. And my only question was can you be a mother and an artist? Is that really possible? And if so, under what circumstances? by that point, my mother had sort of realized that she couldn't really keep going as an artist, and was going back to school, or maybe had already gone back to school to become an art therapist, and then like really just working as a psychotherapist. Yeah, it was just something that like hung over me at 18. Like, can like a mother really maintain herself as an artist? And I remember them just like looking at me like I was crazy. I don't know, just a moment that I remember. Because I like wanted to make that happen. Because I knew I wanted to be a mother, because my experience with my mother was so magical and was so creative and so a core of like my being. And I wanted to be on the other side of that equation, but I just didn't understand how it all worked together, you know? And I was scared, and I like knew that I wanted to be a mother. And I also knew that I wanted to be an artist. I continued making art. I went to grad school. I was at UPenn. I have to say that like even then, I don't think any of the women that were in my graduating class ended up having children. I felt like an alien, that I wanted children. I mean, I think things have changed, like people who are going to grad school now and like women in the art world. But I just remember like the female professors of mine were like, you know, either you have to marry someone rich, you have to have money, or you can't have children, you know, like. And it's true, but just there was this very anti-child ethos, I think, at the time. You know, I felt like an outsider because that desire was so strong to me, and also was so tied to creativity for me. I ended up getting a tick bite when I was 29. I ended up getting acute Lyme that wasn't diagnosed, and it ended up turning into chronic Lyme. And I ended up being totally debilitated for 2 years. So, I mean, then that really like kind of made the desire to be a mother, you know, like even stronger, even more fraught. So after grad school, I moved to Brooklyn. I was living in Brooklyn. I was waiting tables. I was like taking classes at SVA. I was finally making sculpture, and I finally started making the work I wanted to make. And then I got Lyme. So I had made maybe 2 of these like giant sculptures that I was like finally excited about. And then I had to just totally like drop my life in Brooklyn and move back in with my parents at 30 and lie in bed. And I have to say, I can say that I had Lyme, and I can say that it was just debilitating. And I also know that it's impossible to sort of communicate or like explain what that was like. But it's part of being an artist for me, because that began 10 years of being symptomatic and having to sort of be alive anyway, like insist on living and making anyway. You know, whatever, like that experience of having to slow down and like the experience of excruciating pain and cognitive difficulties and like physical difficulties, like it definitely affected how I made work, you know, once I started making work again. I found a way of continuing was through artist residencies. I started to applying for residencies, and because I just couldn't control my body, and I couldn't really hold a job. So that was a way of sort of living. The art sort of got bigger, even though my capabilities got smaller. And then still like, will I ever be able to have a child, you know? So it was like an 8 to 10 year journey of that. When I was 36, I started to, you know, just feel slightly more functional. And I ended up meeting Beatrice's father through a mutual friend. We became friends and talked on the phone as I was still going to these residencies, and ended up dating. And I made it really clear, I want to have a child. I'm 36. Like, and it doesn't mean that you have to have my child, but like, I need to know that you're somebody who's interested in having a family in general, because if not, like this isn't not what I'm looking for, We were together, but I ended up doing a year-long residency in Roswell, New Mexico. I was like making art, but I was also preparing my body. I bought that book, Owning Your Own Fertility or something like that. Tracked my cycle every, just like learned about my body. And like I was just like preparing my body. I wasn't even near, Beatrice's father was still in Brooklyn and I was in Roswell. And that Thanksgiving, my mother never, oh God. And then my mother was diagnosed with lymphoma. I mean, like so many things were happening out there. So I came home for Thanksgiving and I saw Parker, Beatrice's father, once. We had sex once. And, and we knew that we were going to try when I got back or whatever. But I went back to New Mexico and I was pregnant. We didn't know what was going on. My mom, she ended up going into emergency surgery the month before I was supposed to give birth. And Parker's a musician. He was away on tour. So I didn't know if he was going to make it to the birth. And I didn't know if my mom was going to make it to the birth. And I was feeling really, I don't know, alone. I freaked out, They removed a football-sized tumor from her stomach. And she was healed enough by the time Beatrice came. And yes, Parker was still on tour. Beatrice was early. But at least my mom was there with me. I'm separated from her father and adjunct teaching at this point. I'm 43 and, I was sick for so long. I didn't build up that resume. I just don't think that's viable for me. And I don't have those things that my professors said I needed, like the super rich partner or the trust fund or the, and I'm going to be going back to school to become a psychotherapist in the fall because I have to provide for my daughter. And I'm just at this crossroads where the making is strong inside of me, that desire. And yet I'm moving into this other territory with the hope of holding on to both, but wanting to be stable and be a provider. So there's this repetition with my mother's life. And yet she stopped making art and I am committed to keep going. I just feel like motherhood, I didn't want to live a life without that experience. And I feel like making art is just my way of processing my life. And if I didn't get to live the life that I wanted to live, what would I be processing? After becoming a mother, the studio became absolutely sacred. The angst of it fell away. My time there is sacred and it's rich and it's deep. And I think that's because of motherhood. And I don't know how to explain that completely. I think that living with chronic late-stage Lyme, something that limited my life in this significant way, prepared me for the difficulties of motherhood, especially single motherhood or co-parenting. Before being a mother, I had all the time in the world, but I was limited by extreme pain and fatigue and a lot of other symptoms, neurological and physical. And now I'm mostly symptom-free, but I don't have any time. So I've lived this really, really narrow life for a long time. I've been separated from my daughter's father for a little under a year now. My 3.5-year-old daughter and I live in this small apartment in my parents' house in New Paltz, New York, where I grew up. And it's hard not to feel ashamed or feel like a failure when I'm observing other people's lives upstate, specifically artists that I know, coupled artists that I know. Knowing that I'm 43 and I'm still dependent on my parents right now, knowing that I've had long stretches of capable parts of my life, but this is where I am right now. And despite all that, or because of that, I have to kind of live in a place of hope and gratitude. For now, I just keep my needs really simple. My social life involves playdates with other mothers of 3.5-year-olds and studio visits with this all-women's Hudson Valley studio group. And I probably also do too much social media scrolling, and I see my friends who are just rock stars and making it happen. I have to just temper that. And when I have time to myself, I clean and I go to therapy, and I go to co-parenting therapy, and I go to the studio. Because I remember when I first got sick and my body failed me, and I just I realized I just had to let go of everything. I just had to let go. I couldn't use that energy to fists clenched, hold on to things and just let go. And whatever stays and whoever stays, stays, And I have to say that back then I'm shocked that art stayed, but it did. And now I'm letting go again. And in a few years, I'll see what stays. Beatrice is in preschool Tuesday through Friday, basically from 9 to 3. Now, that's new. She had a lot of separation anxiety, and it was just a slow thing, slow build, to get to the fuller days. It's like Groundhog Day, kind of. We wake up together, make breakfast. She watches. I rely on the screen more than I would like to. Although sometimes she'll make oobleck or something and play with that on the floor. Get her snacks and her lunch together, eat breakfast, get in the car, hopefully clothed, hopefully intact. Sometimes not. Drop her off at school. We have our kisses, nose kisses, eyeball kisses, forehead. We have this whole routine. And then I'm dressed all the other parents are wearing nice clothes, and I'm wearing my shirt with holes in it. And I get in the car, and it's a 15-minute commute to the studio. And I drive over the mountain to High Falls, and it's a beautiful drive. And I feel like that transition over the mountain is sort of this, it's this shift, the movement of the light through the trees, and watching the yellow line, the yellow line is showing up in my work, actually. Just very mundane, but also it's this sacred journey. It's this sacred pilgrimage to the studio over the mountain. And then I work on a bunch of different things, and I have my plan, and I get done what I get done. She could wake up sick, and then that week is gone, or then realize it's spring break too, and then, that month is gone. I can't have too many expectations. And my deadlines, I'm going to have a group show or a 3-person show at the end of September. So I need long deadlines because of, the unreliability of the schedule. Usually go home and at around 2, shove some food in my mouth, fill a sippy cup of milk because that's key, and grab something that's sweet because treats after school seem to be a thing, even though I didn't think I was going to give her sweet stuff. And then I pick her up, and if it's nice out, sometimes we'll take a walk or something, and then hang out for an hour. And then at 4, I start making dinner, 4:30. And we eat dinner at 5:30. We play a little bit, we wind down, We read books together, and I try to have her asleep by like 7:30, 7:45. And then sometimes maybe I'll like work on an application for something, or I'll do emails, or I'll zone out and watch Netflix. I mean, it's really repetitive, and I don't exercise. I know that will find its way back in, but I just haven't found space for it yet. I just haven't. And that has to be okay for now, And then sometimes I can't make it to the studio because I have to go grocery shopping, or I have to like meet with someone, or I have to like go somewhere and pick up cardboard so I can box up some sculptures. It's just like, or I have to document work, or I have to deinstall, or, yeah, it's pretty repetitive, and, yeah. I think what I realize is that I neglected to have a vision for what my life would look like in any way. I really just didn't have one. I realize I probably should have had some kind of goal or vision for like much more logistical. I wanted a child, and I don't even know if I had a vision of having a family. I should have. Or maybe I took it for granted just because my family felt so solid and safe. So it just didn't occur to me that wouldn't repeat itself. I don't know. I just feel like Beatrice came out exactly who she was supposed to be. And I feel so grateful that I have a child. I remember when I got pregnant, I was like, holy shit, I don't have to think about this anymore. Like it happened, and like, especially after she was born, it was like just this thing that was like weighing over me for so long and especially like getting sick and just, I don't know, like she's here. Yeah. And like I said, like, I wonder if I should have had a vision for myself. Like, I think it's because I just I had like an emergency plan with my parents. I was like, look, I really want to have a child. I'm really chronically sick. I don't even know how I could meet someone at this point who would want to date somebody who's sick. Like, can we have some kind of a backup plan? Like, how much would you be willing to be a part of this child's life? If I go ahead and do this on my own, like if I figure out a way to get pregnant and like just do it. Because the thought of living a life without having that experience was really sad to me. I think it's because I got sick and I had let go of so much, and that was just like something I didn't want to let go of. I said I let go of everything and didn't hold on to anything, but I guess I held on to that, I held on to that.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Shanti Grumbine is a multimedia artist who transforms common items into devotional objects situated between the familiar and symbolic, using drawing, printmaking, paper cutting, weaving, writing, and sculpture. She lives in the Hudson Valley with her daughter, Beatrice. I invite you to check out Shanti's incredible work on her website. Links to follow Shanti and learn more about her are in the show notes. Also, I want to say a big welcome to you if this is your first time listening to the show. And if you've been listening for a while, it's really wonderful to have you. Either way, I invite you to join us on Patreon. The thing is, we are way more than just this podcast show. This show is about expansion and self-care and consciousness. Each episode touches questions that are central to women's lives. Our monthly members go deeper with us. They give us a monthly contribution to help us produce the show, and in return, we provide members with resources and tools. For example, this fall, we will be hosting our first ever online retreat. The event will be hosted by me and 3 outstanding women who will guide us through various types of meditation, breath work, and prayer. If you're currently a member, or if you become a member before September 1st of this year, 2022, you will receive a free ticket. We hope you join us soon. Links for everything that I just mentioned are in the show notes. This podcast is produced by me, Jamie Younger, and my husband, Pete Herkmans. Thanks so much for listening to If You Knew Me. We'll be back with you next week.